Hey, what's going on, everyone? Good morning. Welcome back to Big Discussions 76, Science and Technology. I see one person is here that is always welcome. That is always a good sight to see. Everybody, give me 1 second here. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. So I'm a scientist. Scientists are very, very big on consistency. And I was gifted an orchid a couple of years ago, and I like having that orchid right there. I like having that photosynthetic juju here in my stream. Shout out to the late Dr. Joseph Fail Jr. from my alma mater, my HBCU, Johnson C. Smith University. He was a plant enthusiast. And an interesting thing about orchids, you don't just, because I had to repot that, and orchids need a specific soil. It's like a barky tree bark like substance. You can't just repot an orchid in regular potting soil. It's very specific. I think it's a jungle plant. So anyway, so now my orchid is back here live streaming with us, and it's starting to thrive because I see a new leaf growing. Paul Wilson, you're the first one in. Thank you for being here. Let's see. Let me make an announcement over on the original Big Discussions 76 channel in case anyone over there wants to come over and partake in this discussion about energy and power blackouts and the danger of such things. Give me a moment. Whoever else is here, you know the drill. Please shout me out and shout yourselves out and let me know who is here. And I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys who come over and over again on a Saturday morning. I don't like to change the time slot. It's good to be consistent when you're creating content, but I appreciate you guys coming repeatedly here to talk science with me. So very much appreciated. Science isn't for everybody. This stuff goes over a lot of people's heads, and as we've seen, whoa, Wei Ling, hi from Turkey. Whoa, we have someone from Turkey, from Europe. Okay, I hope this is worth your while. Obviously, you do speak English because you're there listening. Please smash that like button and consider subscribing, and make sure you are still subscribed because I think because of the nature of the content over here, YouTube might not like me focusing on some of these things. Okay, so create a post. Someone from Turkey. How about that? Well, how about that? Wei Ling, if you want to, I mean, you're new, so if you want to maybe share a factoid about yourself, do you have a STEM background? How did you find me here? Did the algorithm show this to you? You know, if you don't have to, but I'm as a seeing a new person because I have a regular crew who comes in that chat. It's good to see a new person, but I'm always curious to see how new people got here. All right, we're going to talk about power outages, the potential for blackouts. We're going to take a look at what happened in Spain. I had the nameless protagonist here the last two times talking about the mouse utopia experiments what they mean, how that all is playing out now. But before that, I saw I saw this blackout thing, and I've talked about energy here on this channel, and I think yeah, I'm passionate about that, and I think it's something that we all need to keep our eyes on because energy, especially for the Western societies, the Western countries, energy is everything. And if this whole thing we're doing here, this whole our whole way of life is sitting on that foundation of economical and abundant energy. And if that gets disrupted, this whole thing goes off a cliff. So let me share this. And here in the United States, you know, we've got so much going on here. I mean, if it's not the current presidential administration, it's stuff from pop culture. It's Travis Hunter's marriage to Leanne. It's Papoose and Remy Ma. It's people crashing out on TikTok every day over going 50-50, and the breakdown of the family, and not needing a man. And we've got sports. I'm partially guilty there, but we've got so much distracting us here in this country that we don't, you know, think about what's happening overseas, and we don't think about or foresee when problems that emerge in other countries, we don't foresee that those things could come here as well. All right, I'm going to play my intro, which I need to update, and then we're going to talk about what happened in Spain. Before that, I'm going to do one little thing on who can have babies, but then we're going to focus on physics and what happened in Spain. So I'll see you on the other side. Paul Wilson says, can power blackouts be caused by cyber terrorism? I think if Professor Black Ops and Gabe A were here, that would be a resounding yes, especially if those systems are automated and computerized, which yeah, I believe they are. So that's a yes. See if Microsoft Word is working with me here. My Microsoft Office has been very finicky lately.
Um, so Amar, I see you have the periodic tables on your chest.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that all about? Why are you walking around with a chemistry chart on your chest?
Well,
out.
Cheryl, so this channel is a STEM channel. So when I was conceiving of it and figuring out how to grow it, I figured I should have some t-shirts to go with it. So
Okay.
the periodic table is critical to most of the scientific fields.
Welcome to Big Discussions 76, Science and Technology. Science and technology are all around us, all of the time, and there are always science and technology stories to tell.
Hold on, fellas. Hold on, guys. All right. Welcome back to Big Discussions 76, Science and Technology. Oh, Wheeling said something. Okay. He says, oh, cybersecurity. So this, Paul Wilson, we might have our answer right here. Wheeling says, I'm a cybersecurity researcher, telecom engineer. Whoa. And I'm expecting a pandemic blackout, but it is due to sun wave or cyber attack. That's what I research about. I found this scheduled blackout, so I joined. Okay. Well, I'm just yeah. So thank you for sharing that, Wheeling, and thank you for being here. Please consider subscribing. I'd love to learn some more about your knowledge set and what you do, and vice versa. I do a lot of science coverage over here. There's education woven in with this, but I'm capturing a lot of current events for my audience and for myself. So uh, I've kind of found my rhythm there. Um, on that same vein, so yeah, so a lot of science news, a lot of science current events, and the very lovely individual who gifted me that orchid over there. This is a good lead in because they, being discreet here, they once inquired about why I was making content on freezing eggs. Okay. Um, well, and the answer to that was number one, it's a that's science, and this channel covers science, but that's an issue of our time. We weren't at this. I just froze there. Can you guys hear me? Can you see me? I just saw a glitch in the matrix. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Give me a one, say something there in the chat. Okay, cynical optimist, thank you. So this is one of the issues of our time. We're in our birth rate crisis. We're in a mating uh, a mating crisis type thing. Most of the Western countries are dealing with population uh, decrease and collapse. And one of the dynamics here is the female side. I'm seeing myself kind of glitch here. The female side waiting later in its reproductive window to reproduce, or at least to attempt to reproduce, and also freezing eggs. Okay, so this is something society wide that we've never seen before, and it's impacting everything. So, uh, if you're in a relationship and you're making science content, that is a science story. There are all kinds of ramifications for that for everybody. Okay. Now, with that being said, I saw something on X. Shout out to Dr. Thunder. He watches TikTok a lot. I keep my eyes open to what's happening on X, and I saw something from the Breakfast Club that I thought was worth sharing here, because over on my original channel, Wheeling, I have several channels. I have a main channel where I cover general topics and current events. I asked the question on a Monday, what is masculinity in 2025? I should have shared that over here because it had a lot of scientific aspects to it. But this is something that society and we as a species are dealing with right now as well. Before I get into physics and blackouts and Wheeling, this is interesting. Let us know if you guys are experiencing any of this in Turkey. In Turkey, are people deliberating over who can actually bear children, who can actually have babies, and not? Is this a thing over in Turkey and in Europe? So this was on the Breakfast Club. I hope I don't get a strike. This is very, very short. I'm not monetized over here anyway. So let me see if I can blow this up a little bit for you guys. I'm going to bring that back down. So this is what one of my favorite content creators, Curtis Schoon. I've interviewed him. He quoted this from Delano Squires. Curtis says, "Don't forget the debt and resilience. I'm sorry. Don't forget the debt and reliance on nonprofits for employment." And Delano's original tweet says, "This is what you get when your kids go off to college for a degree ending in studies. They come back arguing that not all women are female and that some men can get pregnant. Mark my words, the movement to rebuild the Black family will have detractors that surprise a lot of people." So we link, yeah, in Turkey, is this a thing where people are arguing that individuals other than women and females can have children? Let's play this. This is very, very short, I promise.
Catch up. Like, it's never a day when we should just be like, oh, the struggle will be here tomorrow, but that means you should also be strategizing for tomorrow.
Mhm.
And it's not to say that your life has to be completely shaped by that, because I say often, like, my friends think I'm single now and they're like, so what, you want like a Mark Lamont Hill? No, like, no shade to Mark, he's great, but I don't need that to encompass my entire life. Like, I'm still a human being, so I'm not saying that you got to live, breathe, die, fight the power, but you do have to have some things ingrained in the way that you move about your day, period, to understand that the work never stops. So we
And
just
you
got to
need,
find that balance.
and for you, I want somebody who knows that women can have babies.
So just hilarious just said, for you, I want somebody who knows that just women can have babies. So this other woman talking, she came from, I think, a liberal uh, institution of higher learning where they're spreading the dogma that anybody can bear a child and carry a child to term. I'll let this finish. So they're going to disagree a little bit. Fair use, fair use.
Oh, okay.
Only women can have babies. I just want to let you know that.
Interesting. There are other people who can have babies.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if they have a uterus, they can have babies, but they just might
Right.
not identify as women. Those are
Okay.
two different things. Like, you can be biologically female, but you can't be biologically woman. Woman is a gender construct, a
Okay.
social construct. But if you got a
Okay.
uterus, yeah, you can have a baby.
Yes, that's the point. If you have a uterus, you can have a baby.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we
Period.
agree on that.
You know,
I'm going to play that part one more time. Okay, y'all Borgen, thank you. Let me put up this time I'll put up a slide over this. Give me a second. But Wee Ling, thank you. Wee Ling did say that we don't have this type of conversation, and I think that might be because Turkey is at least in part, a Muslim an Islam influenced country. So yeah, in Islamic countries, they don't play this. So I'm going to play that last part one more time, but I'm going to cover it. Thank you, y'all, Borgen. I appreciate that. I don't know why I didn't think of this sooner. Well, let's put a baby in a uterus there. All right, which is very, very fitting.
Things like, you can be biologically female. I mean, if they have a uterus, they can have baby.
somebody who knows that.
Here we
So
go.
we just got to
Maybe-
find that balance.
And for you, I want somebody who knows that women can have babies.
Oh, okay.
Only women can have babies. I just want to let you know that.
Interesting. There are other people who can have babies.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if they have a uterus, they can have babies, but they just might
Right.
not identify as women. Those are
Okay.
two different things. Like, you can be biologically female, but you can't be biologically woman. Woman is a gender construct, a
Okay.
social construct. But if you got a
Okay.
uterus, yeah, you can have a baby.
Yes, that's the point. If you have a uterus, you can have a baby.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we
Period.
agree on that.
All right. So I think if you do if you do the mental gymnastics there, that kind of does make sense. You can, if you say a woman is a societal construct and other people besides women can have babies, and the only deciding thing is having a uterus, yeah, a person who considers themselves something other, or if they are a, I'll just say it, if they're a lesbian, well, a lesbian might not consider themselves a woman, but they still have a uterus, then yeah, that makes sense. But man, it's a lot of work to unpack this and do all of the gymnastics there. But as I was watching that, I was kind of seeing, okay, I see where this is coming from, where she's coming from. The only important thing is having a uterus. Okay, let's finish with that. All right, all science, current events. All right, so energy, energy. So we're gonna switch into physics. We're gonna watch a video from Dad Saves America. But before we do that, we're gonna just quickly review some physics because this involves physics. All right, so you guys know, and if you don't know, physics was a subject that I struggled with at my high school when I was first exposed to it. Hutchinson Central Technical High School in Buffalo. It was a STEM high school. We had majors. I didn't quite understand physics, but once I started to really get it and understand it, I really enjoyed the section on electricity and electronics. So this video that we're gonna go through it's gonna be highly one of the underlying themes is going to be Ohm's law. So Ohm's law basically deals with voltage, currency, electrical currency, and resistance. So this is a basic principle that you need to understand if you're going to get into an electrical trade or electrical technology or electrical engineering. This is a basic principle that you need to understand. And in general physics, it's just basic algebra. You have two variables, you plug them in, you move them around to either perform multiplication or division, and you get your answer. But you're dealing with this basic principle, Ohm's law: voltage, resistance, and current. Okay. And the other thing is, before we look at the video, this brings together a lot of things. Number one, I finished reading this book. I'm probably going to read it again, Awakening the Master Masculine by Master Yao. I mentioned this on Monday, but in this book, he says over and over that we live in a machine culture. Okay, a machine culture. And yeah, with all these devices, that makes sense. Men Without Work by Nicholas Eberstadt. This talks about the number of prime age working men who are falling out of the workforce. And it's, for the most part, men who are doing things like running the electrical grid. So if we lose a critical mass of men who are running the electrical grid, that's not good for us as a society. And Aaron Clarey basically got to that in his book, A World Without Men. So in this book, from an economist's perspective, he goes ahead and he breaks down which jobs the men do in this country and which jobs the women do. And if, yeah, the men are doing the majority of the work involving maintaining our infrastructure, and in this instance, our electrical grid, okay, our power grid. And all of this stuff that we do runs off of that power grid. This live stream, the video I was working on yesterday, editing, our cell phones. If you have someone in your family, or you know someone or yourself who is on kidney dialysis, okay, you need that electrical grid, or else people are going to drop dead and die. Okay. Our travel, the stoplights on the street, the refrigeration in your home and at the grocery store, all of that relies on energy, 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 energy. Okay. And I'm not going to politicize this, but when it comes election time, that's why you have to pay attention, regardless of the skin color of the candidate or the gender of the candidate. You have to think about their policies, particularly their energy policies, and what's good for us as a country going forward. Okay. Because the progressive side, that's been the side to say, okay, let's implement all of this solar and all of this, all the solar and all of the wind. Okay. But long term, will that keep our society going? Will that lead to blackouts and power shortages? Those types of things. Okay. And the last thing I'll say before I start this video up is, a year or so ago, I did have on a gentleman named Connor Williams, and his opinion and others is that our future, especially with the coming artificial intelligence and automation, a large part of our future is nuclear. Okay, this video is by Dad Saves America. That's one of my favorite channels. I'm going to stop this at various points. Okay, so to decrease the likelihood of getting a strike, because you have to, when you're doing video analysis, you have to give your own insight, so you're just not plagiarizing. But I hope Mr. Popola doesn't mind this. Mr. Popola, if you ever see this, I wouldn't mind working with you at some point. But this is from Dad Saves America. He did something on the Spain blackouts about a month or so ago. So let me close that. This is a 30-minute video. I can't promise we'll get through the entire thing, but he pulls together some really, really cool points and factoids in this video that I think are educational for all of us. Thank you, Sick Diggy. Yeah, those would be renewables, solar, wind, solar and wind. All right, that's loaded up. All right, guys, bear with me here. My computer is doing what it's doing today. All right. So fair use, fair use. Cynical Optimist says, just took some youth through a decarbonization certification last week. You know what, Cynical Optimist, that's a good point. So what this current administration is, it seems like they're committed to, is throwing more resources behind the trades versus the 4-year college white collar route. So for young people, if you're involved in such activities, you might want to focus them towards energy, decarbonization, electrical, nuclear, because these things are not going away. So fair use, fair use. This video is entitled Spain's Green Energy Grid Failed. All right, guys, give me a moment here. Chrome is on a slight lag. a slight lag. All right, let me do that. Let me close out Microsoft Edge because that's probably using up the processor. All right, here we go. And yeah, again, this is important because come election time, you have to think about more than just the color and the gender of the candidate. What policy points are they looking to implement? How's that going to impact us going forward? Fair use, fair use. Hold on. Let me unmute that.
Earth Day might be a communist plot.
Earth Day might be a communist plot. I'm not sure that's wrong. It at least rhymes with a communist plot, let's say. At least it's kissing cousins with a communist plot. Hey there, friends, fans, and foes of Dad Saves America. John Popola here, and I thought I would take this Friday to talk about something that, frankly, we all take for granted, including myself, and that, namely, is power and all the tech that relies on it. Everything in our lives relies on plugging this into that outlet and having it work. And the fact is, it is not as simple as we think, and it can all go dark a lot quicker than we realize.
It can all go dark a lot quicker than we realize. We take it, I've said this ad nauseum here, we take all of this for granted. But yeah, things can go dark, things can go bad pretty quickly if the systems are not maintained.
We got an example of that in Spain against the backdrop of Earth Day. And so what better way to kick off a look back on Earth Day and all the ways it can impact us for good and ill than from our good old former Vice President, Al Gore.
The people who warned us, the scientists years ago, warned us of exactly what's happening now. Every night on the TV news, like a nature hike through the book of Revelation. It is absolutely insane. Look at the fires in this city. And they're going on in New Jersey right now.
The fires, by the way, in New Jersey were set by arson. And as far as I know, all attempts to link climate change and specifically CO2 levels to extreme weather events haven't found much of a link. But this is the most used talking point from Team Gore.
So apparently, yeah, those fires that were in New Jersey, those were linked to arson. You know what? Since we have Al Gore here, I'm going to load up one of my Willie Soon drops. I haven't used one of those recently. Give me a second here. Passport OG, thank you for stopping through. We're just talking a little bit of energy and the danger, the potential for energy and the energy blackouts, power blackouts. Give me a second here. Go into this folder. I hope everybody's having a good Saturday thus far. See if I can find one of my Willie Soon. Let's see. Logos, collaborations. Oh, show drops. Willie Soon. How about let's see. Okay, no, Al Gore say so. All right. So guys, this energy thing, this climate thing, this environment thing, this is a world all in itself. People will fight you based upon your environmental beliefs. I mean, it gets as violent as the whole gender thing. And as I described, the lovely individual who gave me that orchid based upon my political beliefs, I was questioned about whether or not I believe in science. So since Al Gore is here, how about a word from Dr. Willie Soon?
Every time you say, can we have a little debate? I don't understand your facts. Can you explain to me? They just say, no, no, no. Al Gore says so.
And then here's another one. Al Gore says the world is burning up.
It turns out that this climate is among the most misunderstood subject because Al Gore, the average D student, thinks that he understands climate. My God, it's as sure as gravity. He always say that. You guys are just denier, right?
All right, let's go. Let's go back. If you guys ever find that entire talk by Dr. Willie Soon, it's very, very educational, but he takes a lot of subtle jabs at Al Gore in that one, and Greta Thunberg, and that entire the oceans are boiling gang. All right.
There's so many examples I could cite, but the solutions are way more available than people realize. We have alternative. It's a fossil fuel crisis, 80% of it. And yet the fossil fuel lobby blocks any practical solutions, and they're there. Solar electricity and wind electricity, batteries and EVs, that stuff is way cheaper now than the fossil fuel version. And it creates more jobs. It's cleaner. We can save the future. We can give young people hope.
This is the progressive green vision. And frankly, nowhere on this planet has gone as far as Spain. In fact, last Tuesday, Spain was very proud to announce that on that Earth Day, they had achieved 100% renewable power on their national grid. We did it! Total green solution! There's just one problem that you've probably already heard about, and that is, of course, that it all came crashing down.
If you think it might rain later, then all you need is this bearskin heavy storm rain jacket. That's because this is the only
Spain and
Okay, so I saw this from Curtis Goon on X. That was my first time I heard about. That's how I learned about the blackout. I don't know if they talked about this on the mainstream news or what caused the blackout, but this is a summary of that blackout in Spain and the Iberian Peninsula. So I think Portugal experienced this as well. By the way, you scientists out there, do you all know what a peninsula is? Because we're talking about the Iberian Peninsula. Does anybody know what a peninsula is versus an island or an isthmus? So let's see. Let me read some comments here. So Tony says, Al Gore, the inventor of the internet. UFO Kamikaze, I saw you in someone else's chat. I won't say which. I think it was a man whose last name is a color. Sig Diggy says, regarding the issues regarding future power blackouts, no one is considering the lack of investment in the required infrastructure to maintain and improve the electrical grid. Yeah. Sig Diggy says, plenty of that involves bureaucracy, financing, engineering. Let's see. D. Scott, yo, Isada, thank you for being here. I always appreciate you being here. The GOAT, Tony says, a jet of land that is covered on two sides by water. I think you're talking about a peninsula. You're close. A peninsula is surrounded by three sides. An island is covered by all sides, and an isthmus, I think is covered by two sides. So I think those countries in Central America, like Costa Rica and Panama, and I think those are isthmuses. All right. but I'm digressing. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Please smash that like button if anyone wants to make a donation. Well, there's information there in the ticker. I don't have to throw it in the chat. Well, let's get back, because this is a long video, and I'm going to feel this one out. If we don't get through the whole thing today, we won't, we could pick it up later on. But I thought this was worth covering because this could come to our shores as well, depending upon who's in power. Fair use, fair use.
Portugal ground to a halt on Monday after an Iberian Peninsula-wide blackout delivered a stark reminder of how dependent on power modern life is. The power failure at around midday saw people trapped in lifts and stuck in metro and train carriages. As electricity failed to return, evacuations took place through tunnels and on train tracks. Phone and internet signal came and went before dropping entirely. Unable to receive news through phones or the internet, people turned to car or analog radios, if they still had them. Roads turned to gridlock with traffic lights out, and people struggled to navigate without mapping apps to guide them. With cash machines and electronic payment systems down, many large supermarkets and stores closed. Stores quickly ran out of basic provisions, with others facing losses from products unable to be refrigerated. Among the hardest hit were people dependent on home medical units, with finite backup power supplies, and those using mobility devices such as wheelchairs.
So everybody, think about that. Think about that. When that happens, if something like that happens, your cell phone tower goes down. This is useless without the cell phone tower, okay, for the most part. This will eventually run out of power itself. The same thing with your electrical cars. As you saw that gentleman there in the wheelchair, if you are someone close to me is on dialysis. So if that dialysis machine goes down, if someone is in a hospital in an what do you call that unit? Intensive care unit. There could be a surgery going on. People will die. Okay, food will spoil. People will get trapped on subway systems and in lifts, right? So this is huge. Fair use, fair use.
There is, frankly, nothing that touches everything we do quite like power, quite like electricity. Electricity, power, energy is the fuel of everything. It's the fuel of life. It's the fuel of us. When we eat food, we measure it in calories. Calories are a measure of energy. That's what they are. A calorie is a measure of energy. And electricity, well, that's the food of the mechanized world that makes 8 billion people on the planet possible, and a middle-class life with actual healthcare and transportation and telecommunications and YouTube videos. All of that relies on electricity. Reliable, affordable electricity, energy. And when that becomes unreliable, bad things happen. So the question, of course, is if Al Gore's right, and this is so great, and it's already cheaper than fossil fuels, what happened? We don't have the full story yet, but the picture is getting clear pretty quickly.
With weather fair across the area, the hunt has begun for the cause of the massive blackout, one of Europe's biggest ever power system collapses. Analysts said the frequency of the grid dropped, triggering automatic emergency protocols.
Okay, so again, this is going to in part involve physics, specifically Ohm's law. Ohm's law. Because he just mentioned frequency. Okay, which is a unit of that. So you're discussing this principle here, but frequency, the actual unit for frequency is actually hertz, which is cycles per second. So the electrical current, it dropped below a specific threshold, which caused everything to go down. Fair use, fair use. I'm trying to break this up so I don't get hammered for showing this. Some of your comments say, let's see, Asada says, islands are surrounded by water, all sides. That's right. Paul says, I only know the Iberian Peninsula included Spain and Portugal. I also know that Panama is an isthmus. Yep. I think that's the right spelling. Asada says, Alaikum salam to Sikh Diggy. UFO Kamikaze says, Florida Panhandle is technically one. That's right. And then Sikh Diggy says, and the potential for such blackouts stateside depends on the level of neglect of the infrastructure by those currently in administration. So it matters who you elect. It matters the leaders who you elect, and it matters if the citizenry, if we the voters, if we are educated on these things. Okay. Otherwise, we can get caught up in. I'm not saying that social justice. I'm not saying that those things aren't important, and gender equity and those types of things, but you need to be educated on the science. If someone, especially if someone proposes something janky and suspect with long-term negative ramifications for everybody. Sikdigi says, who remembers the panic during the pandemic years? He's going to talk about Texas, because Texas had an issue a couple of years ago in the winter time. How many people remember the blackout of New York City? He's going to talk about that and the fallout from that blackout. Yeah. Folks, we revert to our very, very primal instincts when the energy grids go down.
Attention, the frequency dropped. I'm going to come back to this a little later and geek out a little bit within the limits of my knowledge, but this frequency matter is a serious part of the puzzle.
Data also shows solar generation, which accounted for the majority of Spain's electricity at the time, plunged by more than 50%. One industry source said there was not enough firm power like gas, nuclear, and hydro storage to handle the sudden fall.
So that gentleman just said the solar power dropped by 50%. Okay. Everybody, why would that be? Why would the solar it was slow to do what it did here on my end. Why would the solar energy inputs drop so drastically, 50%? And why is that significant? Anybody? Any takers? The weather? Yeah. So Dr. Willie Soon, Al Gore, one of Al Gore's best friends.
Every time you say, can we have a little debate? I don't understand your facts. Can you explain to me? They just say, no, no, no. Al Gore say so.
They just say, no, no, no. Al Gore say so. Climate and weather. You cannot, part of this whole climate puzzle, you cannot predict the cloud cover. You cannot predict the cloud density from day to day, from week to week. You cannot predict that. So when you're making assertions that the earth is going to burn up, the clouds provide protection from sunlight and solar radiation. Okay. But your models cannot predict that. And your power grid, if it's dependent upon solar power and solar radiance, you can't predict the cloud cover. So if it turns out to be a cloudy day or a cloudy set of weeks, you're not going to have any power. All right. Fair use, fair use.
So this is the question you have to ask yourself. Why, if you're so committed to eliminating fossil fuels, Would there not be enough nuclear? Neighboring France powers itself by 60, 70% plus nuclear power. What was going on in Spain? Well, like California, Spain was pursuing anti-nuclear as a strategy for reasons that are baffling.
Spain has been aggressively phasing out nuclear power plants since 2019, planning to replace the 20% of electricity produced by nuclear with solar and wind energy. The Spanish government's decision closely aligns with progressive energy policies promoted across Europe, prioritizing immediate climate goals over grid reliability.
Frankly, no one understands this. Nobody understands how you could even connect shutting down nuclear plants with climate goals. Nuclear is the most dense, reliable, carbon-free power generation we have ever concocted. It suggests that maybe this isn't really about carbon, but let's stay on this, shall we? Even the New York Times has to admit that Spain's success in renewable energy may have left it vulnerable. Indeed, it appears to have done so.
So nuclear. This is just a review, everybody. Nuclear has a bad rap. We're all worried about Chernobyl and global extinction. But with nuclear power, he's going to talk about this. Please smash that like button. Please consider subscribing if you're not. This is a nuclear power generator. What's happening is you are taking those fuel rods there. You're performing something called nuclear fission, okay, which is generating heat in that water. That hot water is turning that turbine. So you're taking heat energy and converting that into kinetic energy, and that is being transformed into electrical energy. Pretty much every energy conversion to electrical involves some sort of kinetic energy and some sort of turning of a turbine. And he's going to say that in the video. But that's all you're doing here, okay? Now you have to maintain those control rods and make sure nothing breaks out. But that's essentially what you're doing there. You're creating steam, and that's leading to the turning of that turbine there. Fair use.
They have been going around blowing stuff up. This is what progress looks like in the progressive world of energy, destroying reliable sources of energy to stand up unreliable sources. And all of this reminds me of an experience I had over 20 years ago. The grid is very deeply connected in Europe, across Europe, and here in the US and North America. And so when I was living in New York City, working at Nickelodeon at the time, it was 2003. I'm on the 45th floor of 1515 Broadway. That is right in the center of Times Square. And the lights go out. And then my cell phone stops working and no one can get any information. And after a little bit, we walk down 45 flights of stairs and start walking back to our apartment, myself and my then girlfriend, Lisa.
So imagine you're trapped on a skyscraper and the power goes out. Imagine if you're trapped in an elevator on a skyscraper and the power goes out. He just described something similar. He was able to walk down 45 flights to get to the ground. Maggie, I see you there. Thank you for stopping through. I'm going to give you a wrench. When I can get that screen to act right. But let's keep going. Fair use.
And to be wife. This was a power outage that took out the entire northeast of the United States and part of Canada.
Thousands of people won't forget the night they spent trying to sleep or just stay safe jammed onto the sidewalk outside Penn Station and on the steps of the General Post Office. They're praying for the first train home.
Looters took to the streets in some neighborhoods overnight, and after more than 8 hours of darkness, America's largest police force was stretched to the limit. It began at 4:10 Thursday afternoon, a chain reaction power failure that swept the Northeast. Office workers poured into the streets, traffic lights went out, and gridlock gripped Manhattan. How would you describe traffic in the city right now?
Chaos. Complete chaos.
Thanks, Anthony. Look at how far-reaching this was. It was the entire northeastern region was within.
So I think I was in graduate school when that one happened. But as I described, when the power goes out, we as human beings, we revert back to our very, very primal instincts. People steal, they loot, they, in some instances, trend back to violence, right? And so, yeah, it's significant. And what else was I going to say there? Oh, and your law enforcement. The video described law enforcement was stretched thin because there's so much chaos going on. Let me just boot this up so I can give Maggie a wrench. Mute that. All right. So Maggie now has a wrench. Well, hold on. Come on, Chrome. All right. Maggie, you should feel honored. We're stopping the show just for you. Add as a moderator. Okay. There we go. So let's continue. Fair use, fair use.
Without power. It was like we got a glimpse of being North Korea for a couple days. Complete blackout. This is the start of a disaster movie. Or friends of mine are getting ready to make 1 Second After, Bill Fortune's book about an EMP attack on the US. This was the closest to a simulation of that I think we've seen. And for some reason, these events seem to follow my family because a couple of years ago, the same thing happened here in Texas.
Do you all know what an EMP is? Okay, for those in the know, these are of concern as well. Does anybody know what an EMP is? You smart people there in my chat, an EMP. Tony got it first, an electromagnetic pulse. So there's concern that a rogue nation or a foreign country could create an electromagnetic pulse over one of our big cities and cause a blackout. There's concern that I think these could, under the right circumstances, these could naturally happen as well. So an electromagnetic pulse. I think John's going to talk about the Texas blackout now as well, which unfortunately happened in the winter time. Fair use, fair use.
And the reasons why point back to what's happened in Spain and what might become a fixture of increasingly less modern life if we let progressives have their way.
In February 2021, a winter storm that swept through Texas caused one of the most severe power crises in American history. The cold weather created shockingly high electricity demands as people tried to keep their homes warm.
So guys, right now, I recognize that voice. There's a channel called Practical Engineering. If you like technology content, and if you like it broken down in a very, very eloquent way, I would recommend subscribing to Practical Engineering. The content creator there is named Grady, but that's his voice. That's who John is watching right now. Practical Engineering. Very use.
But it also caused problems with the power supply because power plants themselves and their supporting infrastructure weren't adequately protected against freezing weather. The result was that Texas couldn't generate enough power to meet demand. Instead, they would have to disconnect customers to reduce demands down to manageable levels. But before grid operators could shed enough load from the system, the frequency of the alternating current dropped as the remaining generators were bogged down, falling below 59.4 hertz for over 4 minutes.
This image right here.
Do you want to know where to invest $1,000 right now? Well, forget about AI, quantum computing.
It doesn't immediately make any sense, right? What are we talking about? We're talking about this frequency. What is this frequency? This frequency ends up being really, really important because the way electricity is transported over space is over power lines, over high voltage power lines. What that means fundamentally is that in order to get that power at the power plant to our home, it has to go through something called a transformer. These are these massive, basically sets of coils that convert the electricity into high voltage power, the amplitude, if you will, of this frequency of the electrons. Voltage is what pushes the electrons through the system. It is like water pressure for energy.
So guys, right now he's talking about Ohm's law. Voltage equals current times resistance. Ohm's law. Sig Diggy, I do not. What's the significance of the ad blocker? Will that slow down performance? Or is that, I don't have the ad-free YouTube. I'm not paying for that. But the ad blocker, what's the significance of that? I'm probably the least savvy tech person here. Is that similar to clearing the cache? What does that do? All right, while we wait for that, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to let this video go a little bit longer. This is a 30-minute video. I don't want to kill you guys. And let's see. No, that will eliminate seeing ads while watching YouTube on your Chrome browser. Okay, I just learned something new. I will look into that afterwards. Thank you. Sick Diggy. Fair use. And today, in 2025, transformer has several connotations. Transformers.
For electricity. And so if you want to move that electricity fast, you want to get it across the state of Texas or across the country, you need high voltage to do it. And it is operating at a consistent frequency. That frequency in the US is 60 hertz. That's 60 times per second. We don't realize how important that number is.
So hertz, I mentioned hertz about 20 minutes ago. That is it's not, I do think there are some physics problems which factor in hertz. But hertz, the units for hertz is cycles per second. So that's how fast your current is going. And once that drops, as he describes, once it drops below a certain level, your system's going to crash. And so that has to be continuously maintained. Continuously maintained. AB Media, thank you for stopping through, the political pundit of the Black manosphere.
But it defines a lot of the way everything works. And you have to operate at that. It's like the heartbeat of the system. And you have to stay within this narrow range of just a 0.5 hertz to keep everything working. And if you go outside of that, everything starts to break. And if those big transformers break, you could be without power for up to 6 months. And 6 months is enough time for the total collapse of a society. And here's the thing about that. Those giant transformers that every electrical grid on this planet relies on, we don't have a lot of extras of those things. In fact, it's not clear to me that we could build them here in the US if we needed more. And so this is where the hardening of the grid and protecting the critical infrastructure of our society really comes into play. You want to talk about a crisis? That is a pending crisis. A sunspot can take our society down, and it is because of this graph.
Okay, let's take a quick look at this. So, as a scientist, I'm going to change the view here. As a scientist, when you look at a graph, you look at the x-axis and the y-axis to discern what the graph is telling you. So this one unfortunately, this graph does not explicitly say what the units are on the x-axis, but the y-axis is grid frequency. So what they're trying to show is that you have a minimum threshold there that says nominal frequency. So that's ideally where you want to be or close to it. And once it starts trending below that, particularly below 39.4, so your nominal frequency is 60 hertz. I believe that's hertz. And once you trend down to, it's a very, very narrow range. Once you trend down to 59.4 and below, you're in the collapsing zone. So you want to stay in this range. Let's see, where are we? I'm gonna let this go for about 5 more minutes. Then I'll stop for today. Fair use.
Because of the requirements of this magical thing we have to operate at the steady 60 hertz.
It might not seem like much, but that is a critical threshold in grid operations.
So guys, that's Grady from Practical Engineering. It's a cool channel. He unpacks a lot of stuff, a lot of technology, a lot of science. He has very, very good visuals. He's a very, very good teacher. If you like that type of thing, I would recommend subscribing. Fair use.
It's 1% below nominal. Power plants have relays that keep track of grid frequency and disconnect equipment if anything goes awry to prevent serious damage. If the grid frequency drops below 59.4 hertz, the clock starts ticking. And if it doesn't return to the nominal frequency within 9 minutes, the relays trip. That means the Texas grid came within a bathroom break from total collapse.
Let's take a step back and really help, just because this is so important. I want to play an extended clip from this great video by Wendover Productions, and we'll put a link to it over at dadsavesamerica.com that explains the way all of this works at the big picture scale, so you can really understand what's going on.
Did you hear what Grady said, that you only have 9 minutes to get back into the range? If you don't, then things will start to fall apart. Fair use.
A fraction of a second to go, the electricity powering your lights, your air conditioning, your television, your refrigerator, nearly everything electric around you right now was water, gas, wind, or some other form of energy, potentially hundreds or thousands of miles away. If you flip a light switch in Los Angeles, that could cause a turbine in Washington to start spinning. Electric grids are considered some of the single largest machines in existence. They stretch across entire continents.
And that's important. They really are a single machine. They are working in harmony at that 60 hertz. They're not merely a distributed network. They are connected. If you want to plug into the grid, you are plugging in to an engineered single system.
But they're machines with absolutely zero slack. With water systems, for example, there's some extra supply in a storage reservoir at the treatment plant and some extra supply in the pipes connecting the treatment plant to your home. Supply only has to roughly match demand, but that's not the case with electricity. Your lights, your TV, your microwave, everything plugged into the grid uses electricity produced just moments ago.
You guys get that? So the electricity, it's being produced kind of on demand in real time. So what we're doing right now, this is all being generated in real time. So if it cuts out, boom. Gabe has entered the chat. We have someone from the cybersecurity world here. Salute, red team, blue team, and Gabe A. There was a cybersecurity question earlier. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, Paul Wilson asked, can power blackouts be caused by cyber terrorism? I think the answer is yes. If you're still there, Gabe, you can weigh in on that as well. Once again, if anyone wants to make a donation to the channel, you can do so by the information there in the ticker. I'll let this go a little bit longer.
When forecasting demand, utilities need to factor in the hour, day, season, location, and plenty more.
There's a scene from one of my favorite movies, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation with Chevy Chase, where he, bam, turns on this grid of Christmas lights that he'd been working on half the movie, and the thing finally kicks on, and you see they have to click on an extra power generator to just support the rest of the city. That's what's going on. It is real time, delivered at the moment of need. It is crazy.
Now, with whatever demand materializes, utilities then need to essentially instantly match supply. To do this, they layer different energy sources on top of each other. Often, the lowest layer is nuclear power. Nuclear power stations aren't designed to be able to turn off and on easily. It would take the better part of a day to shut down and start up again, so it's rather impractical to operate these in response to demand. In addition, considering how massively expensive their construction is, it would be economically inefficient to let these stations run idle.
One other thing on that is a huge reason why nuclear power plants are so expensive to build is federal regulations.
Did you guys see the size of that reactor compared to the two technicians working on it? And I was just thinking about where would our society be without our STEM guys? Okay, they may not be the most swagged out guys. They may not be the most charismatic guys who like to travel and eat at fine dining restaurants and dance and have pants that fit the right way. Shout out to the Pop the Balloon show, but society would collapse without our STEM guys. Got a comment here from Royston Gibbs. Had it on my downloads and listening during my 6. Must be talking about a different stream because this one is in real time and it's still going. The equalizer has entered the building, and he said in caves. Yep, that's right. Okay. Where would our society be without our guys who could do calculus and engineering and design these things and maintain these things? The whole thing would collapse. Wilaya 3R says, Gabe, what are your thoughts on China's fusion engineering test reactor and being able to sustain a record steady loop generating of plasma for 1,000 seconds? Gabe says, yes, electrical grids can be caused by cyber attacks. Russia has launched all types of cyber attacks against the Ukraine, disrupting their electrical grid operations. All right. John, we'll let you talk for a little bit more. Fair use.
We have known how to do this technology for over 50 years. It works. It powers most of France. Our federal government has made it functionally impossible to build new ones. Let's not misunderstand the source of the cost when it comes to nuclear.
Therefore, they'll run nearly continuously for the entirety of their service lives, except for during planned maintenance.
Okay, let's take a look at this. So peep what he said. He said the government has made it expensive to create these. So that's probably in part fear of them. This says U.S. power mix by day, November 2021. So that y-axis says gigawatt hours. Okay, so I think this is going to layer itself. So nuclear is there at the bottom. I think coal is going to be placed on top of that somewhere, and then wind and hydro and solar. Fair use, fair use.
This means they provide the most stable supply of electricity 24/7. Colorado no longer operates any nuclear power plants, but it does have 6 of the next layer, coal power stations. Like nuclear, most of these coal plants cannot be fired up quickly as they take some time to get up to temperature, so utilities will also run them essentially continuously. Coal and nuclear combined typically fulfill what's called the baseload. Their continuous production essentially equals the valley of demand. They'll make the minimum amount of power needed at a point in the day.
And you would think that if your concern was to maintain human flourishing and civil society and the functioning of hospitals and schools and transportation and life, if you don't like coal, dirty coal, replace the orange with the red, replace coal with more nuclear. Virtually nobody that claims to care about climate says that.
Okay, so one of the concerns over coal is that it's dirty and it pollutes the air. They just showed that those two, nuclear and coal, those are our base energy producers. So he just made the argument that if you want to get rid of the coal, add some more nuclear. Okay, and he also, I think it was either him or the narrator talked about wanting human flourishing. We've talked about that. The environmentalists, the Paul Ehrlich types, me and Nameless talked about this in the Mouse Utopia. Is there more of a concern now for human flourishing or culling down the population? Fair use, fair use.
Virtually nobody, and certainly none of the governments around the world, including all of Europe and Canada and all the rest.
So then, on top of that, utilities need production methods that can fire up and shut down far faster. They need to be able to produce the power to operate all those AC units in hot summer afternoons. The bulk of this job is completed by natural gas-fired plants. Of the 25 in Colorado, 13 of these stations generate using a simple cycle combustion turbine. This is the simplest means of turning natural gas into electricity. Much like a jet engine, the fuel is used to turn a turbine, which turns a generator, which produces electricity.
In 1999, NASA launched a spacecraft 190 million miles into space. 7 years later, it returned with something unexpected.
Hold on, guys.
A mysterious molecule that scientists now say could be the key to unlimited mental energy. What they found is now helping thousands of Americans over 50 regain their sharpness and focus. Dr. Frank Schallenberger explains this breakthrough discovery.
Now look at that turbine. It is 3 people tall, and there's just thousands of these throughout the energy system.
So that is guys, I had a Chrome freeze here, and that's why we got stuck on that ad, but that's a turbine. So you see how small the human is there, and look at that structure. That's a turbine. Okay, Royston Gibbs, I don't know if you're watching live, but thank you for the $10 Cash App. That was for the artificial womb stream. I got an alert. It looks like he was watching that one. So if you want to learn about artificial wombs and what's going on with those, and I have a stream about artificial wombs, but it's a turbine. I'm going to let John finish this point, and then I'm going to wrap the stream up. I hope you guys are getting something out of this. Please continue commenting if it so moves you. Fair use.
Nuclear plants, coal plants, natural gas plants, they all rely on turbines. They all take combustion or heat and turn it into movement that then produces electricity through electromagnetic action. That's what's going on. The nuclear plants don't just produce energy by virtue of the atoms colliding. They produce heat that then moves turbines that then produces the electricity through the turbines and the coils of wires that then move electrons.
So guys, nuclear, I showed this chart right here. Okay, so you have your control rods there. The water goes in. You heat the water. That becomes steam. Okay, and that steam generates makes that turbine move there, and that turbine is what generates the electrical energy, electrical power. If you don't know this stuff, you listen to Al Gore and whomever is running, whomever is proposing these good ideas, you'll know what they're talking about, and it's critical to know what they're talking about as opposed to simply responding to fear and voting on fear.
That's technically how the electricity actually happens.
More advanced natural gas power plants recover the hot exhaust to convert it into electricity too, but the startup process for these takes longer, so simple cycle stations are used for applications where speed is key. Most can reach full power within 15 minutes, making them an effective tool to respond to those short peaks in demand. Nuclear, coal, and natural gas are some of the more traditional means of generating electricity.
I'm going to bring that back so you guys can look at that.
Making them an effective tool to respond.
Okay, so in 2021, so our base energy came from nuclear, then coal, and then natural gas. So that's more than half. So the top of this y-axis says 500. That's about 66% of it. And I think solar and wind are gonna go on top of these, but you're gonna see that that's a minuscule amount compared to the total. Fair use, fair use.
On to those short peaks in demand. Nuclear, coal, and natural gas are some of the more traditional means of generating electricity.
Traditional and reliable means of generating electricity.
Recent proliferation of renewable energy sources, though, has kickstarted a reinvention of this system of base load and peaker plants. That's because when wind and solar generating stations can make power, that power is essentially free, meaning there's essentially no additional variable cost to generate power once the panels or turbines are installed. That's not the case with natural gas-fired plants, for example, as the gas itself represents one of their primary costs. So this essentially creates a new bottom layer to the energy mix, but it's a bottom layer that's uncontrollably variable.
Let's bring that back. So guys, I asked the question, and I'm going to wrap this up shortly.
So this essentially creates a new bottom layer to the energy mix, but it's a bottom layer.
There. So I asked the question, what's the significance of clouds? Well, in the climate change argument, when people are talking about modeling, that Willie Soon video, I'm going to put that in my community chat in case you guys want to watch it. But he talks about how for the climate models cannot predict cloud cover. Okay, so synonymously with that, for solar and for wind too, you can't predict solar the harnessing of solar power for these solar panels. You can't predict that because of the cloud cover and you cannot predict when it's going to be a windy day or when it's not. You just can't. I mean, if you look at your phone, your weather app will tell you for the last couple of days, it's been saying it's gonna rain all week. It's gonna rain all week, and then Friday and Thursday come, and it rains part of the day. It rains half the day, but on Monday and Tuesday, it says it's gonna rain all day Thursday and Friday. So nobody really knows for sure. No one can predict these natural phenomenon for sure. That's the point of this. And that's what makes those renewables problematic in terms of having a base load. Let's see, hour 26 minutes.
That's uncontrollably variable.
And this right here is the inescapable reality of so-called renewables, or more properly understood, unreliables. They are intermittent producers of electricity, and they are doing that in an environment and with a system that needs to very tightly calibrate supply and demand and maintain it at this steady frequency. In the US, it's 60 hertz, 60 times a second. In Europe, it's 50. This video is actually at 24 frames a second, but all of television used to run at 60 frames a second, or 30 divisions of 60, because that was how the power system works. There's so many aspects of our electrified world that rely on this frequency, and solar and wind don't help you out. They give you the power when they're good and ready, when the wind is blowing and the sun is shining. And if not, too bad. Time to kick on those power plants that you have to maintain alongside them in order for any of this to even work at all.
One sunny, windy day could mean that a state has an excess of electricity when added to its baseload sources, while one cloudy, windless day could mean that the peaker plants have to operate at full force.
You guys see that? A sunny, windy day can generate a lot of energy, but on a cloudy, windless day, there's nothing. I'm going to play that one more time.
At all.
One sunny, windy day could mean that a state has an excess of electricity when added to its baseload sources, while one cloudy, windless day could mean that the peaker plants have to operate at full force. Solar and onshore wind power are now some of the cheapest sources of electricity, but because they rely on natural phenomena, they can't match supply to demand the way that the traditional nuclear, coal, natural gas trifecta can.
And this right here, the cheapest. You will find this everywhere you look. I've spent all day looking at different videos across the political spectrum, people who are super pumped about all of this stuff. It's only cheap at that margin, at that moment, having already built these massively expensive wind farms and solar facilities covering vast swaths of land, far more land. They are the biggest consumers of land for any energy producing source. Nuclear can produce many times more energy on a tiny fraction of the land that solar especially, and wind consume.
So that's a trade-off right there. I didn't think about that. So you could argue that solar and wind are free, but that's after you build those massive turbines, which are beautiful to look at. I would love to go inside one day. Maybe I'll get to. But the same thing with the solar panels. You need whole fields of those. Okay, so those take up a lot of space and you have to build them. And the energy output is not always going to be consistent. So these are things to think about and keep in the back of your mind when people are arguing for this, the politicians, or if you're at your Thanksgiving dinner table with your progressive Democratic mother or father or aunts and uncles or cousins. These are things that you guys need to think about. We all should think about. What's the upside? What's the downside? Sick Diggy, so Sal is always coming with a powerful link. This is A comprehensive list of books and articles about energy. Thank you for that, Sal. And Sal is wrenched, so that link should be like sick. I'm gonna make you a moderator too, because you always support my content. Let me see. All right, Sick Diggy, you now have a wrench. We're going to finish this point and then we'll stop.
So even from an environmental impact standpoint, as far as disrupting natural spaces, it's not even remotely clear to me that these are a net positive on that ground. You have to cover massive swaths of land for this temporary power to work. But let's come back to what happened in Spain and can be happening everywhere that goes whole hog for this. Michael Schellenberger over at Public, friend of the show, great guy. He's been covering this fantastically. He had this to write about the events. In a traditional power grid dominated by heavy spinning machines, coal plants, gas turbines, nuclear reactors, small disturbances, even from severe weather, are absorbed and smoothed out by the sheer physical inertia of the system.
So nuclear, coal, hydro, I think that was the three. Yeah, those can absorb large weather events as long as they're not earthquakes.
Heavy rotating mass of the generators, those turbines, act like shock absorbers, resisting rapid changes in frequency and stabilizing the grid. But in an electricity system dominated by solar panels, wind turbines, and inverters, these are these power converters that are solid state that are used in this more recent and more unreliable technology. There is almost no physical inertia. Those giant spinning turbines, think of it like going to the carnival and getting on one of those little spinny things that you pull. What are those things called? Like the tea. It's like the teacup. You know, you go to the Jersey Shore, you go on the boardwalk, you take your kids on. I'll try to pull up a clip that is ridiculous of me, my son, and my nephew pulling this thing. Once you get it up and running, you're spinning fast. That's inertia. That is your potential energy converted into movement.
Are you all familiar with inertia? That's another physics term. Inertia, that is, let's see, inertia. Best way I could think of it, I believe that's when something gets hit and then it keeps going and going and going and going until it slows down. So it's a responsive motion. It's a residual motion, a residual it's a residual kinetic energy. Okay, you know what? We're here. Let's. Sick Dicky says it's the force of movement. It's related to Newtonian laws of motion. Let's just look up what the term is since we're here. Is this a you're not taking a shot at me, cynical optimist? And he says, "Yep, thanks to Bill Nye the Science Guy." LOL. Cynical optimist. Let me give you a wrench too. You should have a wrench. You come back and support with your viewership. Okay. I see Karina's there in the chat. Karine, thank you for being here as always. Karine, have you seen any good movies lately? I was thinking about going to see the Karate Kid Legends later on. I might not. I might just relax the rest of the day. And also, did you see Sinners? Karine likes movies. I like movies, so we talk about movies. a lot. Let's see. I'm just waiting on Google here. All right. While that waits, I'll look it up on my smartphone. Inertia. Let's see. So in the physics context, inertia, a property of matter by which it continues in its existing state of rest or uniform motion in a straight line unless the state is changed by an external force. So something, if it's, I'm thinking if something is impacted, it'll keep moving unless something comes in and stops it. All right. So in outer space where it's zero gravity and a complete vacuum, an object, if it gets hit, it'll just keep going and going and going and going and going unless something stops it. Corrine says, Sinners, fantastic, love it. She says, Superman looks great. We'll probably see all the blockbusters this summer. Yeah, Superman, Fantastic Four. I might even see Mission Impossible. I think that's the last one. But we're talking science here. Wilaya 3R says, mining the moon is not a joke. The only visionless people can't wrap their small propagandized minds around the concept. You know what? Wilaya 3R, as a scientist, I would leave the moon alone. I wouldn't touch the moon because it has a gravitational relationship with the earth and our oceans and our tides. I would leave the moon alone. I wouldn't mess with that. But that's just me. Whoops. We're doing the Spaceballs thing here. Where is there? That's right now. Where's now? Now it's here. Where's here? Here's right now. Spaceballs. I know Korean's seen Spaceballs. There's a scene there where Dark Helmet, they're watching the screen, but they're watching themselves. So right now, I'm doing that. So I loaded up the wrong video. Classic scene. Rick Moranis and Spaceballs. Where's here? Here's now. What are we watching? We're watching right now.
And then if you let go, it'll keep spinning for a good long time. That's the inertia in the system. The entire electricity system has been predicated on all of the sources of energy having large physical moving bodies that store energy in their movement. It is a kind of movement battery source, and it buffers the disruptions, makes it stable, makes it so life goes on, makes it so your preemies incubator doesn't shut off in the middle of the night. Most modern wind turbines are electronically decoupled from the grid and provide little stabilizing force. Inverter-based systems, which dominate modern renewable energy grids, are precise but delicate. They follow the frequency of the grid rather than resisting sudden changes, meaning as things collapse, they collapse along with it. What did that mean for Spain? As a result, when a disturbance hit Spain's grid on April 28th, 1 week after Earth Day, and their excitement about being all renewable, there was too little heavy machinery to dampen the oscillations in the system. Instead, they grew more rapidly, shaking the grid apart. Protection systems tripped offline to prevent equipment damage. Again, this stuff can blow everything up. Plants disconnected, regions split from one another, and within minutes, tens of millions of people were left without power across Spain, Portugal, and parts of France, although France had nuclear power, so they were able to get things back in order quickly. But they also unplugged from Spain, making matters worse for Spain to protect France. The underlying cause of the blackout was not weather. It was the structural fragility created by heavy reliance on inverter-based renewable energy without sufficient backup, inertia, or stabilization.
So let's talk bed jet.
Holy cow! This is something.
So that sums up what happened in Spain. They didn't have the base. They didn't have any of the turbine based forms of energy in place to absorb or to absorb the lack of solar radiation or wind. So without that base there, they were vulnerable to the lack of solar and wind. And also, John just made the point that the turbine based mechanisms, those have inertia. So a lot of those will keep going. They have the propensity to keep going when there aren't inputs going in. You know, guys, we might as well just finish this. There are about 9 minutes left. Hopefully, YouTube was nice enough to keep this up. I think I've made this transformative by just not showing the whole video and putting my 2 cents in and reading your comments. So let's just soldier through the last 9 minutes.
That doesn't get talked about. The reality of things, the reality of how cheap these energy sources are. They're not cheap. They're cheap in the most narrowly engineering, utopian way possible. There's a thing about reality that I think we as adults need to grapple with, and that is that reality is actually messy. It never goes according to plan. So there's parts of life that feel like a pure cost and in fact are a pure cost, like your homeowner's insurance or your car insurance. You don't want to have to pay that money. It'd be cheaper to drive if you didn't need to pay for insurance. And most of the time you don't need it. You're driving along, you're not crashing into anybody, it's going fine. But that redundancy, that buffer is what keeps you from having catastrophic cost. And that's what the wind and solar is already cheaper people fail to admit.
So there was a life lesson there. Life doesn't always go the way you plan or think it should. But you have to have those safeties and those buffers in place just in case something goes left where you don't intend for it to. Walaya 3R, there was a question here for you, from Corinne. She says, question, who was the last country to have a mission to the moon after Indians went 2 years ago? I haven't heard about another moon mission. That's at you, Walaya 3R.
The unreliability of these systems, the fact that they make everything so fragile, means that you go from a little bit of extra cost and in redundancy and energy loss, as each stage of energy production takes place. From a pure physics perspective, a pure electric system is actually more efficient. Electric cars lose less of their energy to heat, for example, than internal combustion engines. So there's a kind of like high school physics class level efficiency that our glorious green future pretends it's going to provide. But it is swamped by your entire country going dark for a couple of days and potentially tens of thousands of people dying.
Probably more than tens of thousands of people. Probably, your people who are in intensive care, your elderly, especially if it's during the summer and your very, very warm climates, your babies in what's that unit where the babies are in the hospital? Those people who are relying on hospital systems. Yeah, you're probably looking at more than tens of thousands of people dying. Your people who need dialysis. Your people, neonatal. Thank you, God's. I've never seen you before, Gadzekpo. It looks like that's Arabic. Those are Arabic characters after your name. Are those Arabic characters? And your first comment said something about Israel and Palestine, which lends credence to those being Arabic characters. He says nothing at all to do with the trade deal with Saudi Arabia, nor recognizing Palestine as a state. I don't know what that's referring to, as we weren't really talking about that. Fair use, fair use.
Not to mention the economic destruction that happens when that takes place. The plans, I mean, if we were in the middle of making a film in Spain, it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost work to have everything shut down that way. That is the thing that gets missed. Whenever you hear renewables are cheaper, know that they're lying to you. They're leaving all these costs that they impose on the future and on the rest of us out of their math. But alas, that doesn't matter for the global elite. And as we think about Earth Day, as we think about where we are and these grand visions, these apocalyptic proclamations, it's important to remember that the first Earth Day was in 1970, 55 years ago. And as you'll see, not a lot has changed.
This planet is threatened with destruction, and we who live in it with death. The heavens reek, the waters below are foul, children die in infancy, and we and the world, which is our home, live on the brink of nuclear annihilation.
So this was mid-70s. We're all still here. We're all still here somehow. We're still, even though we're arguing about going 50-50 and eating at the Cheesecake Factory and all kinds of things. What's a man? What's a woman? Birthing people. We're not going back. Codifying abortion. We're all still here somehow, for better or for worse. Critical race theory. Domestic laws gone astray, gone awry. Sal arguing. Here we go, arguing about nonsense. What's a man? What's a woman? I think I already said that one. We're all still here somehow. All right, fair use, fair use. God, Zekpo, more free Palestine, indeed. Okay, so you're pro-Palestine, so those are Arabic letters after your name. Oh, I forgot this one. Thank you, Tony. Pop the balloon. Yep. TikTok crash outs every day. That's a waste of energy. Jibba Jabba, what is a woman? Yeah, what's a man? God, Zepko. Oh, looks like you're not a Matt Walsh fan. Okay. He gets himself in hot water. I mean, everybody gets themselves in hot water, but he asks some important questions. He made that documentary, What is a Woman? But you're not a Matt Walsh fan, it seems. Okay, I'm kind of Matt Walsh neutral. All right. 6 more minutes. Fair use.
We are in a crisis of survival.
He, along with people like Paul Ehrlich, believed that we were not only doomed, but, as Paul Ehrlich put it, that to embrace nuclear power, cheap, affordable, abundant nuclear energy, would be like giving, and this is a nearly direct quote, an idiot child a machine gun.
Paul Ehrlich. Me and Nameless talked about Paul Ehrlich last week, among others, Margaret Sanger, Paul Ehrlich, the population bomb. There are too many humans on the planet, sucking it dry, overwhelming its resources. We're killing the earth. Paul Ehrlich, the population bomb. But yet somehow we're all still here with Pop the Balloon and the things I just described. We're all still here. So Paul Ehrlich. Fair use, fair use.
These are the anti-humanists. And whatever they talk about, they didn't want us to grow. Our Earth's population has doubled since these people were proclaiming calamity. Global poverty on this planet has gone from roughly 40% when this guy's talking, 1970, to under 9%. There are now more people on this planet living functionally middle-class lives with, well, except for periodic moments in Europe, with stable electricity for now, food, shelter, air conditioning, transportation, telecommunications, access to modern medical care. 4 billion. That's the entire planet's population in 1970. So we have doubled since then. No thanks to these people.
This is a CBS News special.
So UFO Kamikaze had a chemistry offering here. Thank you for this. He says China is currently crumbling because they were dumb enough to use sea sand in salt content and concrete mixing, which is corroding rebar from the inside. Space pioneers, hilarious. Yes, sea sand, that's mostly silicone. So I don't know why that would be used in concrete. Okay, let me wrap this up. I think I only had 2 hours of memory, and I'm approaching 2 hours. I want to wrap this up.
Earth Day, a question of survival, with CBS News correspondent Walter Cronkite.
Good evening. A unique day in American history is ending, a day set aside for a nationwide outpouring of mankind seeking its own survival. Earth Day, a day dedicated to enlisting all the citizens of a bountiful country in the common cause of saving life from the deadly byproducts of that bounty, the fouled skies, the filthy waters, the littered earth.
Here's an important thing to note about the environmental movement and Earth Day. In 1970, there was pollution. We had acid rain. We had cities like Pittsburgh in my home state of Pennsylvania covered in smog. We had litter. We had actual environmental problems. And along virtually every dimension, they have gotten better. The air has gotten cleaner. The waters have gotten cleaner. Yes, it's not perfect. We have like microplastics and we've got endocrine disruptors in the water and runoff into the Gulf. It's not like it's perfect, but it is actually better and cleaner by and large along the dimensions they claimed to care about at the time than we had then. But the CO2, also known as plant food, by the way.
That's a good point. As much as CO2 is demonized, at the end of the day, CO2 is plant food. I'm exhaling CO2 right now. Okay, your dog, if you have dogs, if you're a dog lover, a pet lover, you're contributing to the CO2 on the planet right now. Not the cars aren't, my car's not running right now, but we're all generating CO2. So in the 80s, when I was a kid, yeah, I remember learning about acid rain in school, and I remember being scared to death. So that was a whole thing. That was a movement. As Michelle Obama said, and there's that. That's one of my favorite sayings now. Shout out to Michelle Obama. But you guys know who Walter Cronkite is? There was a line from Slick Rick's Mona Lisa. Slick Rick the ruler. To fight's not right, so the fight's not right, so dang, I can't remember it. But he ends it with, I'm quite polite like Walter Cronkite. The fight's not right, so I recite that I'm quite polite like Walter Cronkite. I think that's what it is. The fight's not right, so I recite that I'm quite polite like Walter Cronkite. Walter Cronkite is often talked about as the last true journalist when we had real news as opposed to fake news. Mona Lisa, that's a hot track on Slick Rick's first. That's late 80s though. That's the hip hop golden age. So Mona Lisa, that's one of my favorite tracks. A nice beat, nice lyrics. Slick Rick with the British accent. Fair use.
Which has also greened the earth dramatically in the past 30 years, by the way. That has crowded out every other issue. Conservation, gone. Animal welfare, gone. They have all been sacrificed on the altar of climate change to devastating effects for everyone, including the actual environment that we, as stewards of God's creation, should care about. And who these people are hasn't changed very much.
Its demonstrators were predominantly young, predominantly white, predominantly anti-Nixon. Often its protests appeared frivolous, its protesters curiously carefree.
Have you seen this new Elon Musk device? I believe it's the biggest internet innovation.
Nothing's changed. Just to shine a mirror on that from modern times, there's this.
5 years ago, we introduced a vision for social and ecological.
Uh-oh, AOC, let's bring that back. AOC. Could be the Democratic candidate in 2028. Very used, very used. Let's see what AOC has to say.
Protesters curiously carefree.
Nothing's changed. Just to shine a mirror on that from modern times, there's this.
5 years ago, we introduced a vision for social and ecological transformation big enough to save our planet, the Green New Deal. The critics jumped against it immediately. They said it was an impossible dream, too impractical, not serious enough, and they were wrong. In the last 5 years, we have made major strides in tackling the climate crisis and creating millions of jobs by building together a diverse coalition of people committed to a better future.
You got that? What's been built so far? A diverse coalition of, of this.
From community organizers and frontline climate advocates to labor organizers and everyday working people, we are winning with a movement that rejects the dystopian future and is committed to building a new one.
Notice.
Sal says it's to fight's not right that I recite, and I'm quite polite like Walter Cronkite. Thank you, Sal. I was close. Jibba jabba, yeah, I gave you a wrench. Godzekpo, yeah, you see we have a little community here. So the more I get to know you, if you come back, I'll give you one. AOC, she's very easy on the eyes, very pretty. I don't necessarily always agree with her politics, but she was definitely an advocate for the Green New Deal. Let's wrap this up. We're on the home stretch.
That rejects the dystopian future, wearing the Green New Deal mask on the cover of The Guardian. But I think there were some of us that understood what was going on all the way back in 1970.
Some quarters saw more than coincidence in the fact that Earth Day occurred on the 100th anniversary of the birth of Lenin, the father of Soviet communism. A high school in Boca Raton, Florida, postponed its activities until tomorrow. And the Comptroller General of Georgia, James Bentley, sent out $1,600 worth of telegrams warning that Earth Day might be a communist plot.
Earth Day might be a communist plot. I'm not sure that's wrong. It at least rhymes with a communist plot, let's say. At least it's kissing cousins with a communist plot. But let me know what you think. Have I gone off the rails? Am I just a climate denier? Or is there more to the story, perhaps? I have, once again, combined and compiled all the links that I've used to get this set up. Head over to dadssavesamerica.com where you can check it out. They're not all a bunch of right-wing crazy people. A lot of them are very moderate, reasonable people because this stuff is physics, and so you can't get around the math. But I hope you can get around in whatever car you drive, electric or otherwise, and have a great weekend.
All right. So I didn't mean to hiccup his ending there. So that's Dad Saves America. That's John Popola. John, if you ever watch this, if you see this, I hope you don't strike me, or I wouldn't mind working with you one day. I'm a science STEM guy, and I'm my mind is wide open to everything. So I'm not a climate fanatic. I'm a scientist. I think about all parts, and I believe carbon dioxide is plant food. So everybody, that was it. So we soldiered through the entire video there. So I better wrap this up. Thank you to everyone who came through and watched this with me. So it matters if our citizenry is educated. and understands what's being talked about instead of being emotionally bullied by those fanatical people who say, well, you don't believe what I believe. Do you believe in science? Even though you're a scientist, do you believe in science? Okay. And if you notice at the end there, the energy discussion, the energy discussion and the environment and the climate, all those things go together. You can't talk about energy without talking about the earth and the climate and the energy. But I'm going to wrap up. Hopefully my StreamYard studio has got this whole thing, especially if YouTube takes this down for any reason. But I think I made this transformative content because I gave my commentary throughout instead of playing John's video all throughout. If I played it all throughout, you guys wouldn't still be here. All right, let's end with a word by Dr. Willie Soon, showing love to Al Gore.
It turns out that this climate is among the most misunderstood subject because Al Gore, the average D student, thinks that he understands climate. My God, it's as sure as gravity. He always say that. You guys are just denier, right?
Al Gore, the average D student. Let's do that one more time. I love that clip. I love that clip. That's one of my favorite.
It turns out that this climate is among the most misunderstood subject because Al Gore, the average D student, thinks that he understands climate. My God, it's as sure as gravity. He always say that. You guys are just denier, right?
You guys are just denier, right? Let me play the other one.
Every time you say, can we have a little debate? I don't understand your facts. Can you explain to me? They just say, no, no, no. Al Gore says so.
All right, guys. Those drops, they kind of trivialize, they're comedic, but I'm going to leave that entire, if it's still up, that entire discussion by Willie Soon in my community tab. He's really a smart guy. He's got a lot of compelling arguments from the climate skeptic or just the science. I'm going to say science because it's not about feeling. It's not about emotion. It's about what do the numbers show. And he raises some very, very important arguments in that live stream, in that interview. Guys, this is my book. If you want a copy, Kareem, you already got one. But for my viewers here, I'll send signed copies. I'm selling signed copies at a discount for you guys. The hardcover, I'll sell it for $25. The paperback, I'll sell it for $22. Using one of those payment methods there in the ticker. Just make sure you send me your mailing information so I'll know where to send it and who to. If you want me to sign it to your government name, let me know what your government name is. But I think I have all that for you guys. Gad, Zekpo, last question that I'll entertain here. And it's a story about what sports teach you about the world. He says, what's your discipline? My backgrounds are general biology and pharmacology. I have a PhD in pharmacology from the University of Michigan. But I'm curious about all science. So I read a lot. I know a little bit about everything. Yeah. And since I was harangued a couple of years ago about whether or not I believe in science because I didn't agree with the Al Gore side, I've taken an interest in the climate discussion. Okay, I was harangued. Do you believe in science, Dr. Dunbar? Do you believe in science? Do you believe in science? People will fight you over the climate discussion. All right, everybody. Let me wrap up here. Thank you all for watching. I didn't intend to go for 2 hours. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. I will talk to you all the next time. Please like, share, and subscribe. All my links are in the description box. Zekpo, you're going to keep me here, man. If I did, I would not be here doing this. I'd be doing something sports related, like journalism or coaching or training or something. But I'm a Michigan football fan, and I do have a sports channel that covers just Michigan football. Zekpo, I see football in your thumbnail. If you want to follow that channel, it's a Michigan Wolverines channel. It's this exact name, Big Discussions 76 space sports. Big discussions, 76 sports. I see you're a football guy there. You'll see me in the thumbnail dressed in Michigan apparel. Go Michigan Wolverines, go blue. 2023 national champs. All right, everybody. As always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Always try to do your best. Ask questions, do your research, and don't just take people's emotions and their beliefs as the gospel. Take care, and I will talk to you the next time. Bye-bye.